Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
Works Minister Desmond Bannister finally speaks out over the fiasco at BPL.
The opposition leader questions the Works Minister's explanation as to why the BPL board was fired.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle WALKINE. Topping news tonight, Works Minister Desmond Bannister put some former Bahamas Power and Light board members on blast today, calling comments in their recent statement dangerous and disappointing. Bannister admitted to political interference but said he felt compelled to step in after he allegedly learned former BPL chair Donna Osborne had her makeup done and security system installed on BPL's tab. Jasmine Brown reports.
The Works Minister finally breaking his silence on the BPL chaos outside cabinet today, as he insisted what has played out in the press over the past week was not the entire story.
I'm only going to say some things this morning because of the what I see as follow-ups. I think that are very nasty and very dangerous, and I think the public has the right to know the full truth.
Following the collapse of the BPL board last week, Bannister said in two statements he would not offer any further comment on what prompted officials to appoint a new board. However, while speaking with reporters outside cabinet today, the Works Minister insisted he had to be brutally honest in order to set the record straight over issues involving the former BPL chairwoman.
Chairman Mrs. Donna Osborne getting a security system for her house and getting BPL to pay for it. That type of thing is wrong. It cannot be condoned. As a member of parliament, as a minister, I cannot accept that type of thing. Mrs. Osborne, to get someone to do her makeup and to give the bill to BPL in hundreds of dollars and ask BPL to pay for it. And in some instances, BPL has paid for it. And BPL is going to have to account for me for why they've paid to go to her house and do her makeup. And there are many more bills that she has submitted like that, personal bills. I've authorized the CEO of BPL to provide it to the media, because you and the Bahamian people have to know this nonsense that has been going on. But I am not going to tolerate that type of thing in any agency that comes under my portfolio.
Our news team reached out to Hasty for those documents. However, our calls were not answered up to airtime. But here's what we do know. Our news team understands that the board authorized security cameras to be installed on Osborne's home for her protection when the board was considering BPL contracts. We also understand that there was a BPL-related photo shoot for a particular magazine that featured Osborne. Other BPL employees were also reportedly involved in the photo shoot. We also reached out to Osborne, who said she had no further public comments on the matter. However, Osborne and two former board members, Nicola Thompson and Nick Dean, released a statement on Sunday night refuting Bannister's initial assertion that the former board was locked in disputes on every critical issue at great cost to the company. They insisted political interference and a continuous disrespect toward the former executive chairman were at the root of the former board's dysfunction. Bannister admitted to interfering, saying he did it only after being compelled to do so.
I will admit to political interference in three respects. I admit to political interference because it is my duty to ensure that what happens in BPL and what happened in BPL under the former administration does not happen again. And so, when issues that came up to me were important for me to deal with and to advise the board that they could not continue in that direction.
Bannister added he does not believe he overstepped his boundaries, adding that he did what he had to do to prevent the former board from costing the company money.
As a minister, it's my responsibility. And if I don't do that, then I expect the Prime Minister to ask for my resignation. But I wouldn't even wait for him to ask me, because I would go.
The government has since announced the new board headed by Dr. Donovan Moxey as the chairman, Stephen Holoesco as deputy chair, James Moss, Deborah Wood, former board member for Ron Bethel, and Vienna Gardner. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, opposition leader Philip Davis is accusing Bannister of launching a personal attack on former BPL chair Donnell Osborne after she and two former board members exposed the level of political interference on the board. He says if Bannister was genuinely concerned about Osborne's leadership, why was she returned as chairman in July? Gillian Gray has that angle.
As the Works Minister sought to clear the air as to what transpired with former BPL board members, the opposition leader says the Works Minister left more questions than answers. On the heels of Desmond Bannister's withering critique of former BPL chair Donnell Osborne outside Cabinet today, Davis questioned why the BPL board headed by Osborne was reconstituted just last month, if that's how the Works Minister feels about her.
If you were to listen to the reasons given for political interference, one has to ask the question that if the minister knew of these things, why was she reappointed in July?
Davis says surely Bannister had to be aware of these concerns regarding Osborne before she and two other former BPL board members wrote a stinging statement on Sunday accusing Bannister of political interference.
It is clearly seemed to be sophistry on the part of the minister to now be suggesting that perhaps she's been removed because of these matters that he's now exposing, right, which must have been in his province prior to her reappointment in July.
The opposition leader accused Bannister of publicly attacking the former BPL chairman just days after he told the media he would not comment further on the matter because Osborne and two others exposed what really led to the shocking collapse of BPL's board last week.
It seemed to me that she stood up for what was right, and because she has put into the public domain the facts of what have occurred, and it is not settling well with the political directorate. They're now going after her personally.
The public back and forth between the Works Minister and former BPL chairman is just the latest twist in the BPL saga. The internal power struggle came amid ongoing power generation issues, which have left customers heated. Even with a new board in place, Davis says he doesn't expect things at the power company to get better.
It will continue to be a ball of confusion, chaos, and at the end of the day, the Bahamian consumer will continue to suffer, seeing unreliable service and seeing a continuing spiral in the cost of electricity.
Davis has previously said he does not have confidence in the new BPL board. Reporting for our News, I'm Gillian Gray.
In other news, the names of two sitting parliamentarians will be forwarded to the Attorney General for failing to submit their declarations of assets and liabilities. Public Disclosure Commission Chairman Miles LaRota telling our News the Prime Minister instructed him to turn the file over with those names to the Attorney General.
The Prime Minister's position, and he has been consistent on this, would be, if people are in contravention of the Act, to let the law take its course.
After missing the first and extended deadline of March 31st, the names of two parliamentarians will now be forwarded to Attorney General Carl Bethel. Just last week, LaRota told our News that two senators and one member of Parliament had failed to file financial disclosures. Since then, the MP is good, but the two senators up to this morning were not. So, LaRota says he informed the Prime Minister and opposition leader.
We are going into uncharted waters, but I think the Act does authorize the Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition to turn that information over to the Attorney General or the Commissioner of Police.
Last summer, the Prime Minister gave MPs who were sitting in Parliament in the last term and did not file their financial disclosures by March 1st, 2017, 3 weeks in which to file, or he was going to turn the file with their names over to the AG and instruct him to do what the law prescribes. If charged, those parliamentarians could be fined up to $10,000 and or sentenced to 6 months in prison. However, Attorney General Carl Bethel told reporters outside Cabinet this morning he hadn't received anything at that point.
Nothing has been referred to me. And so I am in the same position right now as the ordinary member of the public. If something were to be referred to me, then perhaps something might happen. But right now I have no further information.
But here's the reason for that. According to LaRota, the AG may not get those names in writing until the first week of September, when the commission meets.
Well, I have to meet with my commission. Yeah, so that's not situation that I deal by myself. So the first part of the process, what I would have notified the Prime Minister in a short correspondence to me gave me what his position is, and I will then put that position with my commissioners, and we will go from there.
Well, though the names of 2 parliamentarians will be forwarded to the Attorney General, Opposition Leader Philip Davis says he doesn't expect the situation to get as far as fine or jail time.
They should be made public. I mean, it is the Public Disclosure Commission, so things that relate to disclosure should be made public, and those who don't disclose those persons should be made known to the public.
Davis once again called on officials to make the names of those 2 persons public.
Whether you prosecute or not is a question of you have to give the offending party the opportunity to say why they did not disclose, and if the Attorney General finds the reason why they did not disclose what I call reasonable, then the need to prosecute may not arise. And again, the act is designed to ensure that people disclose, and once they disclose, they would have complied, and so it then becomes a mitigating factor.
Despite mounting concerns about the government's ability to purchase the Grand WALKINE Hotel, Press Secretary Anthony Newbold suggested today the government's budget won't be greatly impacted by the controversial move. Jared Higgs tells us more.
Amid growing questions over just how the Minnis administration intends to pay for the $65 million Grand WALKINE Hotel, Press Secretary Anthony Newbold suggested to reporters today that government ministries don't usually spend their full budgets. He was responding to questions concerning where government intended to make spending cuts and other fiscal adjustments in order to facilitate the controversial purchase.
Most ministries never get to spend all the money that's been allocated to them. Just doesn't happen. And so, yeah, that could happen, and the minister talked about that you'd look at an area that you think, I can get 10 million over here, I can get 20 million over here.
Last week, Tourism Minister Dionisio de Aguilar suggested that while sacrifices would have to be made in order to buy the hotel, government would come in on budget. Newbold added that the deal was financially feasible because the government doesn't have to come up with the full purchase price up front.
It's not a situation where you are going to take 65 million or 60 million or whatever they eventually agree on from this pot over here and say, here, Mr. Roll, you have $65 million, give me the hotel. It's not going to happen that way. And there are elements of that, which is why we have the negotiations.
In a credit opinion released last week, Moody's credit rating agency maintained the Bahamas' BAAA rating with a negative outlook. The report stated that the Bahamas could face a downgrade if government failed to meet its fiscal goals for the year. With the unbudgeted purchase of a hotel on the horizon, Newbold was asked whether the Prime Minister was concerned that the Grand WALKINE deal could cause government to miss its fiscal projections.
There's always concern about the finances of the country, and any unexpected event that challenges that will always be a concern.
Government has encountered significant opposition over its plan to purchase the troubled Grand Bahama Resort. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce has said the deal would be a new stick for credit rating agencies to beat the Bahamas with, while former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham called on government not to purchase the hotel, but to instead purchase a majority interest in the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
All right, thanks, Jared. Still to come on Our News, following hours-long delays, is Bahamas Air back on schedule? Plus, the National Security Minister warns of a Facebook scam. That's coming up when Our News returns.